On the tombs of many people resting in their graves might as well be written this befitting epitaph: died from food. Since the commercialization of cooking food, the establishment of food-making companies and the spread of restaurants, and the collapse of food preparation in most homes, the lives and fate of humanity have been removed from millions and given to a few who are only bent on making profits than on our well-being. This exchange of our lives for easy and fast foods underlies most of the modern diseases plaguing mankind. Diseases that never existed, or that were never known, are now rearing up their ugly heads. The question remains, is what you're eating you? Corrupt and crooked people were found all over America during the late 1800s and early 1900s. During this period, tannin and coal tar were sold as wine, mashed calf brain was packaged as cheese, flavored chalk solution was sold as milk, maple syrup was sold as jam, and corn syrup with scraps of honeycomb was sold as honey. Charcoal and burnt coconut husk were sold as pepper, and fried chicory was sold as coffee. Indeed, packaged foods had little or no labeling. The Industrial Revolution had forced many Americans from their rural homes into cities. Prior to the American Civil War, the antebellum period, and the Industrial Revolution, American society was mainly agrarian. Most of the population lived on small family farms where they raised their own animals, milked their own cattle, made their own bread, butter and cheese, grew their own cereals and vegetables and so on. With the expansion of railroads, industries, and gigantic cities, came the mass exodus of rural folk from family farms. Living in overcrowded urban areas with no land to farm and no time and kitchen to cook, many turned to processed industrial foods. Large industrial complexes were established, especially in Chicago, to process thousands of animals and food crops into cans for national distribution. As there were no refrigerators, these industrial food manufacturers turned to the rising chemical manufacturing industry for solutions. Chemical food additives that could preserve food in cans or packages were thus introduced, without considering or testing their health effects on the consumer. Indeed, stale milk and rotten meat were drenched with formaldehyde, the chemical used to preserve corpses, prior to packaging them into cans for human consumption. This became known as embalmed milk or meat. Dangerous chemicals such as borax, cocaine, copper sulfate, salicylic acid, formaldehyde, and others were added to food to keep it fresh, green, and firm. Upton Sinclair, a novelist who sneaked into a food processing plant in Chicago, saw how rotten and moldy meat that had fallen into latrines used by the staff, roaming rodents and human parts chopped off during slicing of the meat, were all quickly processed and packaged with impunity. His book, The Jungle, which detailed these dastardly scenes, quickly became a bestseller. The book caused a national uproar and forced the government to investigate. The investigation revealed the same and even worse scenes. It took the efforts of one man, Harvey Washington Wiley, to rise to the occasion and regulate the food industry. Battling against industrialists, businessmen, lobbyists, legislators, and politicians who were bent on maintaining the status quo, Wiley established and became the founder of the US FDA. Using human volunteers nicknamed the Poison Squad, Wiley fed them for weeks with food poisoned with the common food additives: borax, caffeine, cocaine, formaldehyde, copper sulfate, salicylic acid, and more. Within days to weeks, the very healthy young men of the Poison Squad developed very serious health complications that forced many to drop out of the study. The findings of this research rattled the nation and increased calls for legislation to regulate the food industry. Expectedly, the food industrialists also fought back by hiring scientists who proved that these additives were safe. If you think Africa is corrupt, then look further. The most corrupt entities are in the West. Why are nitrites still used in foods despite their cancerous effects? Why are dangerous pesticides that cause Parkinson's disease and killed millions of bees still not banned? Why have organophosphates like Roundup, made by Bayer and Monsanto, been used for years despite their cancerous effects? Why are they being regulated now after causing so much devastation? Billions of dollars are now being paid to compensate the victims. Evidently, the commercialization of cooking and food processing has affected the health of humanity greatly. It has made us dependent on companies and restaurants and affected our overall health. Space wouldn't allow me to delineate the corruption existing in the food industry, The recent horsemeat scandal was just the tip of the iceberg. The food industry now decides what you eat. When they shut down, millions will go hungry. An example is the shortage of baby formula in the US. Why can't moms make food for their babies? To take charge of our health, we need to take charge of our food. The experiment conducted with the Poison Squad and its outcome only echoes what is written in Scripture. When you sit down to eat with a ruler, consider carefully what is before you, and put a knife to your throat if you are a man given to appetite. Do not desire his delicacies, for they are deceptive food. Proverbs 23:1-3.